I want to welcome you to the first of 2024, I have to get my head around saying that, meeting of the Larchmont Summit. I'm Honora, the president, and today we've got a very interesting meeting on aging. But before we do that, because we're all here in person for the first time in a long time, I'm going to ask for any announcements. We have a lot of people here from different organizations in town. It's an opportunity to share what's going on. Does anyone have an announcement about a program or a project or something like that? Ann.
Hi, I'm Ann Chodosh, and I'm partly representing the AARP Tax Aid Program. We do taxes for, quote, low to middle income people, which covers many people. If you want to go online and see where we're located, it's freetaxhelpwestchester.com. But just to give you a quick thing, we're in Mamaroneck Library on Mondays and Fridays, starting in February, and we're in New Rochelle Library on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we have a number of other locations around town.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Bill?
The Larchmont Lions Club are celebrating our 100th anniversary at our annual Points of Light event on January the 28th at Orienta. At it, we will be recognizing most and virtually, hopefully, all of the community service groups that bring this community together and they make it work. Again, that's on at Orienta on Sunday, January 28th. Obviously, all are invited.
Anything else? Yes.
I just want to follow up about the AARP Tech. I've been doing that for a number of years.
Great.
What you didn't mention is that it's free.
Great. Thank you very much. An important issue. Great. Anything else? Great. Now turn the program over to Tina Sanrangani, who's going to introduce the program today.
Yes, I hope you can all hear me. Is that good? Okay, great. So first of all, on behalf of everyone at the summit, thank you all so much for being here this morning, and I want to really extend my heartiest thanks to our wonderful 3 panelists today who've taken time out of their very busy schedules to be with us. My name, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Tina Sanrangani, and in addition to serving on the summit in my day job, I am an assistant professor at NYU. I'm also a nurse practitioner, and I happen to be focused on aging research. You can, most of my work happens to be NIH-funded research focused on Alzheimer's disease and the aging population. So no one is more thrilled than me to be talking to these individuals today. I am really excited to learn from them. So we have with us 3 incredible experts, and I think they'll be really able to share with us some practical strategies around aging well. So I'll briefly introduce them, but then I'm going to have them introduce themselves. We first are joined by Mr. Matt Anderson, who's president and CEO of the Osborn and Rye, which was recently recognized as one of America's best continuing care retirement communities. Congratulations by Newsweek. We are also joined by Susan Keating, who is the founder and director of Honora. It's a consulting firm that provides unbiased professional advice for finding and ensuring the best aging care options. And finally, Colette Phipps, who is the director of program development for the Westchester County Department of Senior Programs and Services. And in her current position, she conducts research and analyses, and we share a love for that, on trends relating to the senior citizen population. So let me start. First of all, if there's anything I didn't cover in your introductions, we'll start with you, Matt. But I also want each of you, after you briefly introduce yourself, to talk a little bit about a term that we in research use commonly. We use a term called successful aging. And I want you to each, in addition to introducing yourselves, tell us what that means and looks like to you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Anderson. I'm the president and CEO of the Osborn. I've actually worked in the aging service field ever since I got out of college. So 30 plus years, believe it or not. I've been at the Osborn now for over 25 years. The last 7 years as the president and CEO. For those of you who might not know the Osborn, it's just up the road here. It's been around for over 100 years. It is a senior living retirement community, sometimes known as a continuing care retirement community, sometimes known as a life plan community. What is that? It's a place where you can go and live just independently, or it has services and options down the road if you ever need them, such as assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing care. We also do outpatient rehab, home care, all of those services. So some of us like to think of it as one-stop shopping. Others of us like to think of it as a great place for lifelong learning and enjoying oneself. And hey, if you ever need that care down the road, that's what it's at. So, successful aging, great question. Again, any of you ever been to Chautauqua Institute? So I had the pleasure of visiting Chautauqua Institute when I was younger, seeing people actually live as a community. Sometimes people call it your tribe, so to speak. But the great thing that I loved about Chautauqua Institute was the lifelong learning. It was the sharing of education, of different wants, desires, likes, and I see that at our community. People come, they grow, they're part of a community, they're creating committees, just like I had a woman just say to me the other day, I look at this calendar, I feel like I'm back in college, you know?
Yeah.
So you're creating all these neat things. So that is what I see as successful aging, learning to continue to live, grow, do that in an environment with friends, near family. I consider that being successful aging.
Colette, what about you?
Thank you, and thank you so much for your gracious invitation. I'm so happy to be here. So I am with the Department of Senior Programs and Services, but I also work for our Westchester Public-Private Partnership for Aging Services, which is our not-for-profit. I'm happy to be able to have those two options or alternatives because it allows us to give so much to the seniors here in Westchester County. And if you didn't know this, let me explain to you or tell you that at this point we have about 248,000 seniors in this county that are 60 years of age and older. So, I mean, you know, quite frankly, we got a lot of grist for the mill. A lot of grist for the mill. And of course, Westchester County has the highest longevity rate, and that's 79.2 years. So I've been with the county for about 23 years. I backed into this whole career, and I'm so happy that I did. I love working with seniors. I'm also an adjunct professor at a number of schools at Fordham University, NYU as well. But successful aging. So let me just say this. As an area agency on aging, Westchester County Department of Senior Programs and Services, we are working with the most vulnerable population. We are usually working with the poorest and the sickest. So there's sort of this stratification in terms of successful aging. But I know that there's one thing that transcends all of that, that a person is able to live and to die where they want to be. And as far as I'm concerned, that is success. And if you ask 9 out of 10 older adults are going to tell you that they want to live and die in the place where they are most familiar around the people that they love the most. So as far as I'm concerned, that's success.
Very powerful. Susan.
Good morning. This is my first meeting at the summit, and I am impressed at how many people are here at 8 o'clock in the morning. So driving here, I wasn't so sure. Matt and I were talking a little bit about that. Good morning, and thank you for having me. So my company is Honora Care Management and Consulting, and I started that a little over 8 years ago when I left the Osborn. And I started my company because I saw how confusing the aging space can be. I saw the need for somebody without a sales pitch, so to speak, to talk about options. Somebody who didn't need, we are a private pay service, so we're working with the opposite end of the spectrum typically. It's okay to say these things out loud. But there are referrals and kickbacks, and there's a lot of things on the background, and so we help to navigate differently. So we serve as an advisor. What used to be called geriatric care management is now called aging life care. And that rebranded about 10 years ago, but everything takes a while. And so one of the reasons for that rebrand is because if you go to any a hospital, an assisted living community, the term care manager is used pretty interchangeably, but doesn't really define the role of the person who is helping you. So an aging life care professional, we are a national profession. There's about a little over 2,000 of us throughout the country. And so we really serve as the boots on the ground for older adults and their families navigating decisions relating to aging. So we're not a home care agency. We refer to home care agencies. We refer to continuing care retirement communities. I'm on the board of At Home on the Sound, which is an aging in place community here. Gloria is our executive director, and I didn't see you there, Marion. Welcome, good morning. So At Home on the Sound is an aging in place village. And so I believe very strongly in aging in place, but I also recognize that there is sometimes a need to age in place somewhere else, and maybe not in our long-term family home. And so that brings me to the answer to successful aging. In my experience, and I'm not going to pretend that I know, right, because I'm a little bit younger, although that's changing too. But what I see as successful aging is in 2020 we talked a lot about pivoting. We talked a lot about, okay, we have to do this. We kept changing because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think successful aging is pivoting, is being able to take the time to recognize that we're at a different phase of our life, and also that we are heading toward a different phase, right? There is a natural biological process. We are not going to see as well. We are not going to drive as well. These are just realities. And what I see, we have this one client, so she is approaching her 101st birthday. And two things always stood out to me. When I first met her, she knew that she didn't want somebody in her home all the time. So we proactively worked on an assisted living community that she would move to. But she also shared with me that she knew she wasn't going to be driving forever. And so we talked about moving into the assisted living community while she was still driving so that she didn't have two major changes in a very short period of time. Incredible. The other thing that she shared with me is that she strategically made sure she had younger friends. She actively goes to the theater. She's an incredible bridge player to this day. And she knew that she wouldn't be driving forever, but if she had younger friends, she would be able to get where she wanted to, especially at night. And so I think that that's just an example of embracing, right, of recognizing where we're heading. I don't know if any of you have read the book Outlive.
Yes.
Fabulous, right? Yeah, I'm Peter Attia. I follow his podcast. I'm really impressed with him. If you haven't read it, it's a big book. It feels like a textbook, but it is all about strategically thinking about longevity, and not necessarily just in lifespan, but in health span. So I'll leave it there. That I think successful aging is sitting around a table like this, in getting informed, in learning about options, and being open to the fact that, as I was talking to somebody this morning, we're not who we were when we were teenagers. We're not who we were when we were in college. We are always changing, and so we have to change with that.
I think all of you brought up excellent points, and I take away, also let's feel like we're still in college when we're as we're aging. But I think you bring up a fair point. And Susan, what I'm hearing from you is also a lot of this is around planning, right? So we have to accept and embrace this and find our strengths and in whatever age we are and whatever functional limitations we have. What can we do and how, what can we still do and focus on our strengths and continue to grow, as you said. What I want to know from you, Susan, is that the issue with aging is that even in my own family, we bury our heads in the sand. We're like, we'll talk about that when we, my mother always, she cares for my father, and she says, I'm going to do this until I can't anymore. And I'm like, please don't do that, because then I'm going to be, so the day that you can't, I'm going to be doing it. So what I want to know from you is that when families approach you, what are the most common problems and concerns that they initially come to you with? that are things that all of us can be thinking about more proactively to
Yeah,
support this.
yeah, definitely. And so, a lot of people have come to us when they have reached your mom's preferred state of, I can't do this anymore. Because I think there's a bit of, you know that saying, seeing the forest through the trees? When you're in the role as a caregiver, if you can just get through today, then you can figure out the other things tomorrow, right? And we know that tomorrow kind of technically never comes, right? Because we're always in today. I would say we don't have enough people reaching out to us in a proactive way. I'd love to see more of that. Again, in 2020, I think everyone, we all kind of said, ooh, we're more vulnerable than we'd like, we had to kind of look at it head on. So we had more people at that time reaching out to learn about long-term care insurance, and I know we'll talk about that a little bit later. Because we have these policies sitting in our file drawer, but when am I using it, what's the value? People reach out to us when they realize that they can't do it on their own anymore. And what we do see is that, families don't always live close by, right? So adult children live at a distance, and so, I have a call this afternoon with somebody who lives in California and is concerned about her mom. Her mom wants to age in place, stay in her home, but there's just things that are falling through the cracks, right? So how do we help her live successfully where she is, and what is really the best solution for her? We have, sometimes it's closer to, end of life, when somebody is saying, what do we do? Should we be considering hospice right now? But more than anything, it is for education to kind of understand where we are and what our options are so that we can figure out, what that decision is. And also, unfortunately, there's also a lot of people who are reaching out struggling because their loved one, it's not a term that I like, but it's used often, is in denial. I don't like denial. I think it's just it's like a lack of awareness. But people who are saying, I can't just put my head in the sand anymore. It's staring at me right there. And again, the beauty of our work is that we're invested in the solution. We're not invested in, how we get to that solution. So we really quarterback and pull in, different solutions for different people. And we try to first figure out what's one thing we can agree to. Because if you go in, if any of us walked into any of our homes and said, this is what you need to do, we'd maybe politely offer that person an exit from our home and take care, never come back again, right? So we have to really approach people as human beings, how we would want. But the tricky part is the needs are significant and they vary significantly, right? So where is the support system? What is the relationship with the support system? Is there trust there? And the big piece that we haven't touched on is what's called solo aging.
Yeah.
So people who, right, we talk a lot about the daughter should do this or the son should do this or this. There aren't always adult children who are willing to be involved, but sometimes they literally don't exist. So the proactive piece becomes so much more important for the solo ager, because who is the power of attorney going to be? Who is the healthcare proxy going to be? Who is going to be checking in on that individual?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of components. So people call us for lots of reasons, and if we can't help, we work very hard to make sure that whoever calls us has a connection to a potential resource.
So that you touched on a lot of good points. It's actually a great segue to my next question for Colette, because I think research shows that about 80+%, I think AARP did this study, not that long ago, and they do it annually, that more than 80% of people want to age in place, as we talked about, as all of you mentioned, right? Nobody says, and I bet if I did a poll right now and said, how many of you want to go to a nursing home today, or want to see yourself aging there, you would all say no, right? So what can we do to help people stay to age in place, right? If that's what the goal is and that's what you want, what are some of the key things families or individuals can do to make sure that that happens?
Tina, that is such a good question, and to tell you something, if I had a genie in a bottle, that would be the first thing that I would ask, that people would be proactive. And I'm gonna tell you a few stories, please stop me.
Yes,
because
okay.
I have a tendency to go on and on, but I'm excited about the things that we're doing, and we want everyone to know about them. So on that back table, I have a lot of information, and one piece of information that I have is called My Aging Plan. So when you take a look at this, it looks very whimsical, but I have to tell you that the content is very, very real. It is very, very important that we begin to think about aging as we're aging. 18 years old, 17 years old, 16 years old. And that's one of the reasons why we have intergenerational programs. It is so important for us to think about it. When you talked about caregivers, I will never forget the call, and I get about 10 caregiver calls a day, all right? Now, I remember the day that I got a call from a caregiver, and she simply screamed into the phone, help. I mean, I would do it, but I think it would shake you up to say it the way she did. There are so many people out there that do what we do, crisis management. It's not a situation where we're thinking about these things can happen, but they do happen. And what we need to do, to tell you the truth, we are the boots on the ground. All of you sitting around, I mean, this is not a conversation you want to have every day, but it's a conversation that you want to be able to have that is really important at the dinner table. So we do have My Aging Plan, and I'd love to get that out to everyone, because we've had it for years, and anyone who sees it says, oh my God, you know, so these are the things you do in your 20s, the things you do in your 30s, your 40s, and on and on and on. We also have a caregiver coaching program, and this program was developed by Fordham University and the Department of Senior Programs and Services. My colleague here, Jennifer Crawford, is here. She coordinates that program, and let me tell you about it. The program is essentially run by people like you, people who have been caregivers. And what they have said, I mean, the familiar thread throughout all of what they do is, I was a caregiver and I don't want anyone to have to go through what I went through. So this is a program, it is evidence-based. We began the program 9 years ago. We do have coaches here in Westchester County, all volunteer. As a matter of fact, we're getting ready to have a caregiver coach conversation in a few weeks. So what happens is these are volunteers. We have a curriculum, we have a guide, we have the entire thing for people to be a part of. So when our caregivers call us, I will talk to them about, would you like to have a coach? Let me tell you what that coach is like. That's one of the programs. Another that we have, thank you so much. It's called Care Circles of Westchester. That's another program that we put together with our Caregiver Collaborative. That's a guide that we put together. It is a how-to. And in terms of caregiving, and I know that all of you will agree with me, that sometimes you can't do everything yourself. Okay, and you do have to lean on others. And Mom might love your meatloaf, but there may be someone else that can do it almost as good as you. So as good as you do. So what happens is that you've got to move to Plan B. So we give them a how-to, step by step, cast a wide net. When you need the help, go to the person that can help you. And don't say to them, yeah, I will give you a call. No, say to them, on Monday, I really need for you to come over if you can, and read to Dad because I have another appointment. Now, I do want to preface this and all of this that I'm saying by saying that many of these ideas that you hear about and these programs that we've been developed have been visions of our commissioner may come. So I give her all glory for this, because in all honor, I am privileged to work with such a visionary. And it allows us to take these programs, and she has ideas about everyone that I've mentioned, and manage them and develop them. And they are all award-winning. So when you talk about planning, I want to say to you that right now, we're in the thick of a wonderful program called the Planning Ambassadors for Aging. And it's called Live Well, Age Well, the Planning Ambassador for Aging program. And we are asking people here in Westchester County, 18 years of age and older, to complete our survey. I just happen to have a lot of surveys here. But you can complete that survey through a QR code.
Yeah.
Right, you can. Yeah, fine. Kick it up here a notch. But, and this is so important. We're doing this project with Fordham University. We're so excited about it because we're getting that information in terms of caregiving, in terms of transportation, in terms of rest and leisure. And we're asking people the 3 top priorities in their lives. What would they like to see as they age? Now, we also have a whole nother, I'm gonna make you dizzy, we have a whole another apparatus, and it's called collaboratives. We have our caregiver collaborative. We have our Alzheimer's and related dementias collaborative. Transportation, okay, health and wellness. I can name them all, but we do have 17 or 18. All right?
I'm gonna come back to that because we have a special question for you about these programs that
all
are
right,
taking
great.
advantage of, so thank you.
But anyway, in terms of planning, please complete that survey so we can get that information back to our policymakers and make things happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, Matt, my next question is for you. Is, so we all know that we want to age in place, but that may not always happen, and maybe that's not always an option. So how can older adults and their families determine when it is time to move out of their homes into a continuing care retirement community or life plan community? Like, how do we know when it's time?
So it's interesting. I think everybody, it's different. I will tell you from my uncle and my aunt's perspective, it was when he stood up on a ladder trying to change a light bulb and he fell off and broke his hip. And his wife said, "We are moving." So, I think it all depends. I think we often see the calls after major holidays, family visiting, seeing changes in mom or dad at that point in time. I think also it could be, a spouse seeing, who's taking care of a loved one and just seeing, this is getting a little bit more challenging for me. I think the one thing that you've heard in common from everybody so far today, though, is how can we be proactive in all of that, right? And I think the worst time to make that decision is when you're in the mode of crisis. And unfortunately, that's sometimes what we see too often. So what I would encourage you is, my colleagues have said here today, is be proactive. Get out, visit these places. Often places like the Osborn and other places will have monthly events. Come to those monthly events. Get to know the people that are there. Stop into the sales office. This is going to be 5 years out. Just start collecting information of what might be some things that you may want to move to down the road if that time comes. And that time may never come. We often say at the Osborn, our biggest competition isn't the place down the road. The biggest competition is up, and entirely understand that.
That's a really great point. So one of the biggest challenges I think that families face is we want to provide high quality, and I think as individuals, we want the highest quality care for ourselves. We want to provide the highest quality care for those we love. But how do we pay for it? How do we pay for it? So, Susan, my first question to you, and you started to touch on this earlier, long-term care policies and long-term care insurance policies. How affordable are they? Are they worth it? Should everybody have one? What if you do have, tell us a little bit about that.
So, when it comes time that you need care, it's too late to buy a long-term care insurance. It's kind of like waiting for a car accident and then, right? So What is affordable to you, right, that's something that you have to decide as an individual. There are different options that are available on the market now, and again, you'd want to speak with an insurance specialist. There are some that are life insurance policies that can be flipped into long-term care insurance policies, so there are different options. What some people do, when you look at the cost of care, I think this is an important part of the conversation. Living in a nursing home on a private pay basis today is about $250,000 a year, right? That's your out-of-pocket expense. And then for an assisted living community, you're looking at probably about $13,000 a month. And independent living obviously varies, but you're looking at essentially a premium rental. There are some communities that are about $9,000 or $10,000 a month, and then others that are closer to $5,000. And a home health aide, right? So somebody coming into your home as an individual to care for you one-to-one, that hourly rate is creeping toward $40 an hour right now. And the minimum for delivery of care, right? These are a lot of people who are traveling by public transportation. So having somebody in your home for an hour a day is less and less likely. What used to be a 4-hour minimum for care is creeping up towards 6 and 8 hours a day as a minimum today. So I know that that's not long-term care insurance, but I think it's helpful to know what we're talking about as far as costs. So going back to the theme of being proactive, when you're looking at your financial plan with your financial advisor, you want to be sometimes educating the financial advisor about what these costs are. Because in my experience with my own advisor, I had to say, no, those aren't real numbers, because those are, you can't plan for a $40, one person coming into your home for an hour. Like, you have to have a realistic plan. So what I suggest, if I could, right, to my own parents, who I'm trying to get out of their big house and still go to a different option, but it's a little bit of the shoemaker's children right now. But the first is to, again, realistically plan for what your expenses are going to be. When you move to, we talk about staying at home, but when we also talk about moving to a community where assisted living is available, you now have shared care, and your overall expenses may be lower than if you had one-to-one care at home, right? And one-to-one care at home is tricky because when that person leaves, you don't have anybody, right? So these are the things that we help to kind of suss out. What I can tell you about long-term care insurance is that while yes, there can be some red tape to get through to activate your claim. Like, so let's say you have your policy. If you have a policy right now, it's we'd be happy to sit down with you and kind of go over some things. But generally, you don't want to let go of it, for the most part. And some people are sitting on some really great policies. The critical piece about long-term care is that what we see is the psychological value. The idea that, I talked before about how there's a lot of resistance to care. The long-term care insurance policies allow for almost the idea that we've prepaid for this, so we might as well use it. And it helps a lot in that conversation of denial to be able to say, listen, you have a policy, why did you invest in this policy? Why don't we start using it, right? And there are some strategies because there are elimination periods and there are things that you want to suss out and really learn about. If you have the policy, can you hire a private caregiver? Can you even have care at home? Does it reimburse? There are some policies that reimburse for some of our services. So are they worth it when you have it? They don't hurt, right? It's helpful to be able to say, even if it's a relatively small amount, it's still something. It helps, not only financially, but I believe a lot on a psychological piece. So I hope that
Yes.
helps.
That's a very interesting insight. And Matt, my question for you is around services like the Osborn. There's a lot of us in this room who think you have to be privileged to get into that. So tell us a little bit about the affordability and availability of services like yours.
Yeah, so, we are all private pay. If you come to our skilled nursing facility, we do have the option for Medicare. A lot of people think Medicare is gonna cover a lot. It really doesn't. The government keeps cutting down how much it's gonna pay for in a skilled nursing. And typically it's after a post-event, in the hospital, coming there and getting some sort of rehab. But even when that's done, they're cutting you off and saying, go ahead and now pay privately or go back home, with services. So that gets tough. So healthcare is expensive. And I would say within the last 5 to 10 years, with minimum wage increases, with inflation, with other costs, it's gotten even more expensive. The one thing that I will say, and I've had a lot of people say this to me even in our own community, is coming in, they didn't think they could afford it. And this is why you want to do the research. This is why you want to go ahead and be proactive. I think when you start breaking down the costs, and you may have a planner for this to start looking at things and everything else, and I'm sure it's on that back table. Really, there's a lot of expenses that you have living in your own home, right? You have your mortgage, you're paying taxes, you've got all your utilities, you've got all your lawn maintenance and other things that could potentially go wrong with the house. You could even have a gym membership or other types of things. And then you think about all the traveling that you may do to get to services when a community might have those services right there. So, again, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's expensive, but I think when people actually sit down and they start going through all the costs, they start to see that it's a little bit more affordable than they would think.
Yeah, my mother would say that there's no price she would pay to not have to live with me, so price to ride.
Just to that end. I mean, so what are you getting in the end? I mean, you're getting that socialization. You're not in isolation anymore. For all of you who might have parents or loved ones, we got a big storm tonight. Are you worried now that the power is going to go out and all these other things? These are the worries that basically went away when people move into our community, and then know that you've got people there looking out for mom and dad, so I can concentrate on what I need to concentrate. And then when I come to see mom or dad, boy, I'm spending quality time with them, as opposed to thinking about, oh, wait a second, do we have this? Is there food in the house? If everything goes wrong, if the power goes out, what are we going to do? These are all things that people, those worries are taken away in that quality of time. I always say, boy, I'd spend anything for that quality of time, having that quality of time with mom and dad in those later years.
I think that's such a good question. Colette, question for you is, does the county offer any sort of financial assistance programs to older adults or any other kind of financial supports to help them stay in their home? We heard about the AARP, to help with taxes. But is there anything we need to know about from that perspective?
Well, one of the things that you need to know with the Department of Senior Programs and Services, like I said, we mainly serve the most vulnerable. But again, we do have our financial benefit savings guide. You must also remember that with a AAA, most of our programs are means tested. So what happens is that if you make over a certain amount of money, you may not be eligible, for these programs. As everyone on the panel has said, aging is expensive. Okay, so, and quite frankly, if you're on Medicaid, you're gonna more than likely get the most.
Totally.
All right, that is exactly what happens. And as Matt has said, the reimbursements are, simply not high at all. But we do have a financial benefits and savings booklet. In this booklet, it does give you a lot of referrals where you can go to get the help that you need. A lot of our not-for-profits who work for us as subcontractors are able to offer services and expanded in-home support services. And to tell you the truth, that's probably the one that I hear about all the time. Send somebody to my house to help me. I need help. And some of these programs also have a wait list. I mean, there's, quite frankly, there are dozens of things in here, dozens of items, dozens of places that you can call that will be able to help you, but you cannot be over a certain amount in terms of your finances.
And just so you can present, the county government and many of the local town village governments also have a deduction of your property taxes through the assessment, which is done by checking with the local assessor, and that's a deduction is means testing, is a threshold. It is a pretty broad-based situation for those that are having trouble staying in houses from a pure tax standpoint. That is also across the board policy. Towns, villages, and the county has that in place.
That's great. And so I think that's, that really brings us to, and we're gonna open up just shortly for questions, so I hope you all have other questions to ask here. But I do wanna just say, are there other programs that you've begun to touch on? You talked about your different collaboratives. Are there other programs that you think the group here needs to know about that people can be taking advantage of that we have not touched on yet?
Well, to tell you the truth, what I would love for some of you to be a part of is our collaboratives. And if you take a look at this, we are a livable community county, and one of the first, all right, and we've been that since 2012. We were deemed livable communities, and these are places where people can grow old with dignity and comfort. Okay, so our collaboratives, and I said we have 18 of them, as a matter of fact. I am happy to connect you to our collaboratives. We have co-chairs for each one of them, and they're doing lots and lots and lots of work, because it's very important that you all know what's happening in the field of aging. Right now, I happen to sit on a couple of committees for the governor's master plan on aging. So there's a lot going on. I think that people are finally realizing that, there's this huge demographic shift, and it should not be called a tsunami.
Silver
It should
tsunami.
be, yeah, let's don't do that. I mean, it's a wonderful challenge that we have to work with, and all of us have to work with it. So being a part of our collaboratives, being a part of livable communities, we have 6 not-for-profits that run our livable communities programs. They're called Livable Communities Connections, because we recognize and understand that what's needed in Mount Vernon may not be needed in Chapel Walk. So we want you to be a part of that as well. And the numbers are on, the contact numbers, Jennifer's here, I'm here, happy to talk to you about all the things that we're doing, and happy to talk to you about the things that we would like for you to be a part of.
I think it's so important to send this message that these communities are county where we live. This is a critical place where we learn, it's where we work, it's where we play, and it's where we age. And so to know that we have these tremendous resources available is very, very important, I think. I will open up shortly for questions. Does anybody have any burning questions at this point? Yes, please, go right ahead.
Okay, so I may not have this correct, but it seems like there's steps of independent living, then assisted living, then skilled nursing, etc. Growing up, or up until this last year, I just assumed that if I didn't need independent living or assisted, I could jump right into skilled nursing if I needed that. However, what I'm hearing lately from having been through a DeRote class and some other things, it seems like if you don't get in on that bottom floor, if you don't move in during independent living, you may not be able to just show up at a higher level thing. Could you tell me I'm right or wrong?
So if you've seen one life plan continuing care retirement community, you've seen one life plan continuing care retirement community. So I just want to put that out there. Everybody has their different types, and I could give a whole hour presentation on this. I think what you may be speaking to, if you're going to move into a retirement community where it has all the different levels, is there's what's called a type A life plan community. With those, you actually have to take a health assessment to get in, and basically it's an insurance model. You are paying a certain entrance fee on the front end and a set fee throughout your life at the organization, most likely, and that amount is never going to change. Then there's places like the Osborn, which is a type C continuing care retirement community, where that's fee for service throughout. You only pay for the service at the level that you're at. And at a place like the Osborn, you don't have to be on our independent living to enter our assisted living or our skilled nursing facility. You can age in place in your home, come in when you want assisted living later on the road, or even skilled nursing down the road. So everybody's a little bit different in the types of plans, and this is what we were all talking about, right? Go out, do some research. You know, at the end of this, you have all of our information, contact us. We'd be happy to help you out with any questions you have. That's a great question.
It's a very
Yeah.
good question. Others?
Yes. Just, while I appreciate how important it is to address caregiving issues, I was a caregiver for my father many years ago, and other issues like family and so on. You had mentioned earlier on solo aging, people who don't have family or relatives or whatever. How is that issue being addressed on a local and also on a county level, or is it being addressed?
I can't speak to, Colette, I don't know if you want to jump in on how it's being addressed from a government perspective. I know from our standpoint, we're trying to reach out to people so that there are plans that are being put in place. Because right now, there are advanced directives. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term. An advanced directive is a healthcare proxy, a power of attorney. You also may have heard the term living will. And these are documents where we designate an individual in advance of a need, right? We assign them as an agent to make decisions, whether financially or from a healthcare perspective, on our behalf as if they are us. That is a critical first step in saying who will make these decisions, because even those people with relatives may not want their relatives to be making these decisions for them, right? So, so that would be one piece, and then following up on, what Matt was talking about earlier in getting educated about different options and doing our best to be thinking ahead. Engaging an aging life care professional would be another key piece, because now you have a partner who's going to be with you throughout, your life's journey, whatever that might be. I have a client right now, he is still actively working, and he went through a journey with his own mother, maybe similar to yours, and he knows for sure that he would not want his siblings making decisions for him. So he and I meet on basically an annual basis, just to kind of touch base and connect. But again, he's traveling, but he's really kind of living what we all should be doing, is thinking proactively about putting a plan in place.
And I'd like to add that the outreach is very, very important. What we try to do with the Department of Senior Programs and Services is to go to places. We don't want to always preach to the choir. We want to go to places where people have not heard about us before, or have not even thought about aging. So that's why I say we have these intergenerational programs. And we also have these places where we go, like colleges and universities, where younger people are, to be able to talk to them about these things that are happening. And what happens is, that they'll shake their heads and say, yeah, I'm dealing with my grandmother right now, or I'm dealing with my mother. So that outreach is really very, very important, and not just a preaching to the choir, because we know the baby boomers were the ones that had fewer children.
Right.
So there's going to be a lot of solo aging happening there.
Yeah. The other thing, just locally, to mention, At Home on the Sound, and there are other aging in place villages. Being a part of creating that community on a local basis, and really, there's a Mahjong group who gets together in the office right there, and then those are like informal support groups in a lot of ways. You get a lot of great tips. You get you build a sense of community. You have people checking in on you. So I think it's very intentionally thinking what is the support system that I have to realistically build. But it does put a lot on the individual.
The topic is aging well, and I'm 80, and as as I look around the room, I know I'm not the oldest one here, and the people here are engaged in life. And while there's a motivation to talk about aging in place, the real solution frequently is aging in community. As people are here, they're engaged in the community, including the diversity of the community. As I mentioned, I'm with Alliance. It has given me, in my aging well, the opportunity to be engaged with many of you, and whether it's the Lions or the Rotary or the Elks or the Women's Club, our type of community gives the opportunity to age well by keeping your mind sharp, or your activity sharp. I'm going to look over here at Jay, who I know is older than I am. I'll tell you, wherever the Lions are, Jay is and will be, whether or not it's active cleanups in the community, whether or not it is involved in reaching out to help us get event or material for our upcoming event. And I'm just going to ask for a second. There are many Lions here. I would just ask the Lions just to raise their hand if you were a Lion. I'm not trying to sell the Lion.
You're doing it very good. This is a nice club.
So, my point here is that while our goal here is to make certain when we're coming towards the difficult parts of our life, but at our age, we have the ability to be more engaged than younger people than we are.
Yeah.
Simply because we have the time, we have the knowledge, we have the experience, but most importantly, we have the community.
And I think what that touches on is the importance of having purpose,
Right.
right? So there, you know that saying, we have to have a reason to get out of bed in the morning, right? And sometimes for a caregiver, it is to take care of somebody else. But it is critical to do exactly what, to reinvent, to make sure that you're intentional about your retirement. To not just sit in front of the TV. But again, COVID-19 taught us gave us a lot of information, how well it taught people, and how much we've changed things, a different story. But isolation, right? It really highlighted what we've known for a long time about how devastating isolation is, and being very purposeful about getting out and being involved in your community in whatever aspect you can. I agree. I think it's critical.
These organizations give you the opportunity, the resources to do it. You know, you talk about being alone or single. When you're part of that community, you're never alone or single, simply because the opportunities are so significant
Yes.
to get involved that for many here in this group, they say, I can't take on another one. But the point is that you always have time to take on something different and provide support for that. Use the way. You obviously, in coordinating the summit, as you do, the diversity of this community you see, and you see where you can fit in and where you can't.
Yes.
Everybody brings themselves.
Yes, and I think you spared everybody reading a ton of published research that shows, productive engagement is really one of those secrets to successful aging, I think, and I think we'd all agree. I see we have a question here, yes.
Well, it's not a question, I'm just picking up on what this gentleman has said. I've been involved with Home on the Sound almost since the beginning, like 13. It gives me a purpose.
Yeah.
I'm a volunteer. I was a driver. I don't drive anymore. But it's an incredible organization that we have right here. We provide 2 rides a week. I mean, it is expensive, a little expensive, but we have scholarships for people who can't afford it. We have so many socialization events. It's like we've got an incredible community. It's totally changed my life. I've got all kinds of friends, and we do movies. We used to do, we do some museums. We used to do that fairly regularly. It's an amazing thing, and the people who need the rides are so thankful that we're here. And let me tell you, all of our drivers are volunteers, and anyone who has time, you can do it once a week, you can do it twice a week if you're so motivated. I mean, it's an amazing organ, and we have it right here in Mamaroneck, Larchmont.
Yeah.
So I needed to do that.
I see we have one question here.
Can I just follow up on that?
Yes,
Just a quick second. We're fortunate that At Home exists for Larchmont and Mamaroneck. We're fortunate that Spry exists for Rye, Harrison, Portchester. We're fortunate that Gravelton Village exists in Bronxville. The greater problem is those are the unicorns. And there are a lot of areas of this county that are not represented. I think Colette made this point. The poorer, more vulnerable communities don't have that. The west side of Yonkers, the heart of Mount Vernon, do not have the at-homes on the Sounds and the Spries and the Gravelton villages. And that's why the concern comes into what role does government play in addition to those nonprofit organizations.
Absolutely. There is TRA, which does provide rides, and that's not a membership organization.
Well, we have paratransit and different things,
Yeah.
but I just want to be clear.
Yeah, I know.
What's great about Mamaroneck and Larchmont and some other communities is not universal. That's the problem.
Absolutely, George.
I see we have one person here, we have lots of questions. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, kind of relates to what George said and what this gentleman said. I love the phrase aging in community. And what I was thinking, okay, I'm the co-president of the Homeless Act, my name is Mary. How do we get, I'm not sure, I haven't thought this through, just came to me. How do we get the various aging in place organizations around Westchester to somehow communicate with each other better and perhaps be able to expand into communities that are not represented? So, I mean, it seems to me we should, I know there is, Lynn is involved, we have a lot of, I don't want to sound people here.
I think Colette could speak to
Yeah.
that.
Yes, go ahead.
And if I was going to say to you that you have a book that's called the Center for Aging in Place.
Yes.
And the person who runs that is Lynn Reichstad.
Yes, that's right.
You may not see it in the list.
Right here.
Oh, my goodness. I didn't see you.
That's your largest
All right, so talk about that.
Then you're the solution, it appears.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's not a solution, I wish it were. But Aging in Place is a county organization that encourages the establishment of individual aging in place groups in communities where they do not exist. And those that do exist were helped by the Center for Aging in Place. So one of the things that we would do is try to develop aging in place groups where they are not number one, to help those that are currently existing, and also to reach out into the larger community to talk about the option, and it is one of many options, as we've been hearing, one of many options how to choose where you want to be as you get older.
So I'm sensitive to everybody's time here. I know we need to wrap up, and I know we have several other questions. Rena, do we have the room for a bit so that people can ask their questions to this group if they have a few more minutes? If others have to go, is that okay?
Yeah, but let's,
Yes.
it's fine.
Okay.
Let's just, we need to wrap it up.
Yes, okay. I'm on Elaine's time here. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. If you have extra questions, I hope some of our panelists or their representatives will be able to stay and answer them if possible. We have all the wonderful pamphlets and resources on that table that you can grab on your way out. Please do, because I think we realize that they have a wealth of information in them. I want to thank you all so much for your time. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of the questions, but please feel free to approach us.
Thank everyone else for your wonderful presentation today and your questions. I also want to encourage you to come next month on February 13th, and where we are going to look at our local courts.